India, our constitution, our public discourse, and our intellectual and academic understanding tend to see both the Abrahamic religions and the Indic religions as having the same worldview and almost the same kind of faith, which is not true. The Indic faiths, except Hinduism, others are also proselytizing religions. Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism are proselytizing religions. They want to add to their numbers. And a huge success was also achieved by Buddhism and Jainism. But it was not to regard those who do not follow their faiths as somebody who must be eliminated or who must be treated as second-class citizens or who must be given the status of a slave. This is not the Indic religious approach. Of course, Hinduism stands out as a religion which does not distinguish between those who follow this and those who do not. But so far as the Abrahamic religions are concerned, their worldview is clear. They have a global agenda to turn the world in their own image. That means the world has to be completely Christian. The world has to be completely Islamic. This is the approach. In this, they have a clear them versus us division of the world. It is their God versus others' God. It is their religion versus the others' religion. And in this, the others have to be given a certain treatment. They have to be treated as slaves or second-class citizens, or they may even have to be eliminated. And all these three kinds of treatment are theologically permissible. Because of that, any comment on their religion, any comment on their founders, any comment on their principles is something which makes them react violently, which will not happen in the case of the Indic religions. You say something about Buddha, people will feel hurt, but nobody will take a bomb in their hand or a sword in their hand and cut somebody's throat. So this difference in the basic paradigmic idea of what is Indic religion and Abrahamic religion has not been understood, and that is why when we say that when we are criticized, we are not like that. When you are criticized, you are reacting violently. It must be understood that basically Abrahamic religions have a violent theological drive.
Okay. Bilkis Bano to the provocation by T. Raja Singh. Many are saying these incidents confirm the BJP's antipathy towards Muslims. And therefore, we are seeing these reactions. This has got nothing to do with what our texts tell us, what our teachings tell us. This is now, we have hit the wall, and this is the response to that. It's a deep alienation. How do you respond to this observation that is being made increasingly?
You see, I am not here to defend the BJP. It is for the BJP to defend whether in Bilkis Banu's case what they have done is correct or not. I have taken a position it is not correct. It is not correct for the simple reason that in Hinduism, a woman being treated dishonorably can never be accepted. So my position is different. But to say that somebody takes a position on BJP and that is BJP's position, and then expand it to the entire ideological framework of BJP, and then make it some kind of a Hindu attitude to the Muslims, I think it is politics.
It is politics. It is completely political, you are saying. Opportunism, call it that, call it at a degree of sophistry, fair enough. Let me take it a little further, because I've had some on this channel interviews with Mr. Owaisi, for example, who criticize the Sartan Se Juda slogans, but eventually don't act against those people who are going out there and chanting Sartan Se Juda. But they also say that the violent reaction by Muslims is a natural reaction to what we are seeing now is a hostile environment in general for Muslims in our country. And this sort of also connects with what is being said about India having taken a more divisive turn, and you have probably read those articles in the Western media, etc., etc. And of course, a large number of self-proclaimed liberal in India who say this, that there is now a greater disregard in India for Muslim sentiments, for Muslims in general. What do you say to this group of people? Some of them are quite respectable as far as intellectuals are concerned.
You see, it is not that that this is something which has suddenly appeared today. When Mahatma Gandhi was leading the country, when Jawaharlal Nehru was leading the country, when Sardar Patel was in the picture, when Abdul Kalam Azad was there, what happened? At that time, there was no question of national or Hindu program against the Muslims. Why did the Muslims behave the way they did from 1920s, 1937, 1940, 1947? So it is not that the Muslims react, they also proactively work to further the Islamic agenda. That is the natural drive of the Muslims. They don't want any resistance. They don't want any objection. They don't want somebody to say what you are doing is wrong. If you say what you are doing is wrong, that's a provocation. That means they cannot face criticism. The most important thing is Islamic theology brooks no criticism from within or out. That is why even those Muslims who slightly deviate from Islam are being put to death. You know what is happening between Shias and Sunnis. You know what is happening to Ahmadiyas. So don't think that Islam only reacts. It is very proactive, and that is what resulted in the creation of Pakistan. Otherwise, Mahatma Gandhi was an enemy of Muslims. Jawaharlal Nehru was an enemy of Muslims. It's completely wrong to contextualize the what is known as the Muslim anger, part of which is, according to me, the media creation, to the ruling disposition today. Is completely wrong. The fact is, the real fact is that Hindus suffer from the paradox of tolerance. You see, it is a great tolerant tradition that this country has built over thousands of years. And this tolerance is facing intolerance for the last 2,000 years. When the tolerance keeps on tolerating the intolerant, a situation comes when the tolerant itself is a danger. This is what Karl Popper said in 1945 as the paradox of tolerance. The Hindus are facing the paradox of tolerance for the last several centuries. And because of democracy, because of the explosion of media, this tolerant aspect has been cast aside. And the intolerant aspect has been projected as only a reaction. Completely wrong. Where are these intellectuals who will speak about what happened in 1920s, 30s, 40s? There was no Modi then. There was no BJP then. My view is this discourse has to be more deep-rooted. It cannot be based on newspaper headlines. It cannot be based on Twitter. It cannot be based on one or two incidents. It has to take a broad historical view from when Ghazni Muhammad invaded India, when temples were demolished. I think we have got to take a broad historical view as to what is the behavior of who. Then we will know who is proactively intolerant and who is resisting that intolerance. Resisting intolerance is called intolerance today. This is precisely what Karl Popper said as the paradox of tolerance.
Okay. So, Mr. Gurumurthy, I presume we are drawing a distinction. When you say Muslims, you are drawing a distinction between the ordinary Muslim citizen of this country and those that are politically realized Muslims. who are furthering perhaps political Islam.
100%.
Yes. So we are not conflating the entire community here. We are
100%.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Not at all. I am only talking about the theological impact. And the theological impact and the theological exposition is driven by a very small percentage of people who have in their hold a very substantial number of people. And the others cannot but go by what they say. This is the hierarchy of opinion making in Islam.
Let me ask you this, because it's an important point in our conversation now. Many people say that after independence, it has taken about 40 years for a Hindu political conscience to awaken. And that has happened on the back of, for example, the Ram Janambhoomi movement. It happened on the back of the growth of or the wider acceptance of Hindutva. And what we are seeing really is a reaction to Hindutva. We are not seeing a reaction to the ordinary Hindu. Just like the ordinary Muslim is peace-loving, so is the ordinary Hindu, but there is a component which is a politically realized Hindu who advocates Hindutva. And you hear that from Rahul Gandhi, you hear that from the opposition all across, north, south, east, west. You hear that from, of course, intellectuals, leftists. They say the problem is Hindutva, and that is what is creating and engendering this backlash.
You see, Hindutva is an evolution which dates back to the days of Swami Vivekananda, Aurobindo, and it had a wider acceptance even before the freedom movement. In 1909, when Mahatma Gandhi wrote the Hind Swaraj, he said it is the Hindu model of establishing centers of worship, the worship of the Ganga, that keeps the country united. And when he was asked, what about Muslims? He said they have to be assimilated into it. This is 1909. In 1935, Jawaharlal Nehru wrote in the Glimpses of World History that Swami Vivekananda's Hindu nationalism was not against anyone. And Hindu nationalism and Indian nationalism cannot be separated easily because India is the only country of Hindus. This was the position. Even the Rajani Palme Dutt, a leftist who established the Communist Party in England, he wrote that even if the British had not established English education here, as they claim that it is only the English education which taught us the spirit of freedom. He said our Veda Padashalas in distant corners of India would have given us the spirit of freedom. This was the position till 1940. Everything changed when Jinnah passed the Pakistan resolution. So the Hindu character of the country is not something new. This was recognized by the Supreme Court in the Hindutva judgment. After all, Hindutva was a political movement, a cultural political movement which won elections on the Hindutva platform in 1991. And this was contested by all the political parties who lost. And they went to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, we see no difference between Hinduism and Hindutva. It is the ethos of India, a way of life, the culture of India. And this was not the judgment of 1995. This was sourced in a constitution bench judgment of 1976 when Congress was ruling. So this is not Hindutva judgment in isolation which evolved as a response to the political movement in 1990s. So the Hindutva judgment is an affirmation of the evolution of India as a nation from as the 19th and 20th century progressed. And this judgment the Supreme Court refused to review. A 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court said in 2016 that we don't want to review this judgment. It means those who talk against Hindutva are really talking against the Supreme Court. They are talking against what Mahatma Gandhi wrote in 1909, what Jawaharlal Nehru wrote in 1935. So people do not know the basic facts. So my understanding is that we suffer from a Twitter mentality of discourse. We need a Tarka Shastra. We have to sit and discuss how this nation evolved, how the freedom movement evolved, how it was distorted by the Muslim separatist movement. And that is what has caused a havoc in this country.
My final question, would you accept, Mr. Gurumurthy, that community relations today in India are at a historic low? And if so, how do we address this?
You see, I have a feeling that there is a perception and there is a reality. The perception that there is an inter-community relationship at a very low level is not matched by reality, is my view. People have to keep up this perception, have to talk about it. This is politics. They have to create vote banks, sustain the vote banks, not allow any vote bank to dilute, whether it is caste, whether it is community. So I don't go by this perceptions created by interested discourse. I think India has much more capacity to be flat. For example, as religion is seen as a divider, language is a unifier. A Malayali Muslim feels more comfortable with a Malayali Hindu than with a Hindi-speaking Muslim in UP. So there is an interlocking of India at various levels. Language, then caste. There is huge caste factor working among Muslims. And there are Kurmi Muslims, there are Jat Muslims, there are Sayeds, and there are Gujars, and there are Labais, and there are Urdu Muslims. You know, it is not that Islam is a monotheistic religion, but Muslims are not a monotheistic community.
So you don't believe that there is this fracture, rupture, call it what you want to. Very interesting, very interesting. It's been, once again, very interesting speaking to you. Yes. No, you want to say something? Final words? Yes.
My final words are, the media should focus on building an alternative narrative to the political divisiveness which has come. This divisiveness need not be attributed to one party or the other. Who is proactively doing it, who is reactively doing it, both have to be distinguished. My view is, if you have to question Islam, you have to ask them only 3 questions. Tell me who is a kafir. Tell me, am I a kafir? Tell me what is jihad. Will you do jihad with me? Let the Muslim establishment answer this question. Why do you go and talk about Prophet? It is unnecessary. You talk about what is relevant today. In Prophet's time, what happened, we are not concerned with it. You put proper questions which is relevant to Hindu-Muslim relationship in the context of Islamic theology. I think the Hindu discourse have to become more positive and more rational, more intellectual than it is today.
Well, you couldn't have got a better exposition of the subject that we have discussed. Thank you very much, Mr. Gurumurthy. Thank you very much for sparing time.
A nationwide protest. The idea behind Har Ghar Tiranga is to invoke the feeling of patriotism in the hearts of the people and to promote awareness about the national flag. The centre believes that by bringing the national flag home collectively, it will become symbolic of not only an act of personal connection to the Tiranga, but also an embodiment of our commitment to nation building. Even though the opposition has criticized Har Ghar Tiranga campaign to the core, the BJP, on the other hand, has stuck to its nationalism agenda. While a political slugfest ensued over the use of Tiranga, the people of the country are dipped in patriotic fervor to celebrate the day. Even as the campaign gets criticized, the idea and the main aim of the centre behind this campaign was to instill the patriotism in each and every citizen. And perhaps BJP did succeed in doing that.
In August last year, Taliban seized to power. They promised they have changed. They called themselves the Taliban 2.0. But what has changed? I'm being joined by a very renowned human rights activist, Zarifa Ghaffari. Thank you for speaking to Times Now, Zarifa.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Zarifa, let me begin by asking, Taliban call themselves the Taliban 2.0. How far do you see that the Taliban has changed?
I'm really curious to know about it, that whom they promise that they will change. Because if they exactly promise that they will be changed and someone got this promise from them, so that person needs to, or that team or that country or whoever it is, they need to come up nowadays and answer all the questions. So that's so clear. We knew from that starting that they will not change and they will never get that, because it's not just a war. It's not just terror. It's an ideology which they are carrying it, the same from that starting of their presence in Afghanistan. After the fall of Mujahideen, after the retook of Kabul by power in 90s, they had the same thing. They were the same people. And
one more terrorist, Mufti Hafizur, linked apparently with Al-Qaeda's India branch. This is the fourth such arrest by the Golpara District Police in connection with the same terror outfit. Within a week, Mufti Hafizur was sent to 5-day police custody. Latest images of the construction of the Grand Ram Mandir that has been shared by Sri Ram Janabhoomi Trust. It shows the construction of the Sanctum Sanctorum and the plinth of the temple. The Kerala High Court has issued orders on the state government, where the High Court ordered the government to shut down all religious places and prayers halls that are functioning illegally without permission. Protesting fishermen groups of Thiruvananthapuram burned the effigy of Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan, where the protest was staged against the construction of the seaport that, according to the fishermen groups, is leading to coastal erosion.
The same thing was happening that time as well. They was promising women rights and education and everything of women time to time, but it was just a promise. And all during the 7 or 6 years of their time, their governance in Afghanistan, they never agreed on what they promised.
So Zarifa, how do you describe the condition of women and young girls in the country right now?
In a country where women are able or allowed, not able, but are allowed legally, and unsocial wise, to sell their body parts, to sell their children, to sell their household, to sell their dreams, hopes, everything, but not able to study or work and earn some money legally and with honor to feed their family. So definitely that could be the worst happening to women. Nowadays, Afghanistan is the only one country around the world where girl child is not able to go to school, especially for secondary and higher education. So it shows clearly that how women are surviving life in a country where just your gender becomes a crime to stop you from all humanitarian rights. So definitely living in that country will cost you not only your life, but your dignity, your hope, emotions, and dreams.
Do you think there is a chance for change?
Actually, it's so clear. They have to change. They have to change. Not only starting from that small resistance or activities inside the country, but global wise, there is a big amount of resistance going on. There is previously, and in the history of Afghanistan, it was always men rising up and changing the situation. But this time we see it globally that there are women who are stepping up. Women of Afghanistan are not anymore women of 90s. So it's so clear that they have to change. Otherwise, they need to just give up.
You also recently visited Kabul, if I'm not wrong. How do you see the country has changed?
But just few days later, the closure of schools, and that also in a way that schools were open, girls were already inside school for 1 or 2 hours, and then suddenly Taliban are coming and kicking them out of their classes. So this is, this was that, climbing up into the top of a mountain and then without having anything in your hand to help you and support you.
Joe Biden has made a statement during a White House meeting with officials on protecting access to abortion. The president further stated that he is optimistic that women in the country will make their voices heard in November. UN officials issued an urgent appeal from Russia to allow the safe passage of humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Humanitarian coordinator Denise Brown stated that they need security assurance in order to help people who are still stranded. IAEA Director General and French President Emmanuel Macron discussed the IAEA mission to Ukraine, the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which came under siege on the part of the Russian forces. Macron stated that the war must not infringe the nuclear safety of the country. COVID vaccine maker Moderna is suing its main competitors Pfizer and Biotech, accusing them of copying Moderna's technology to make their own vaccine.
You are on top of the world with Times Network. And you're watching Times Now.
Good afternoon, hello and welcome. You're tuned into Times Now and you're watching the Saturday edition with me, Poonam Burde. Let's get you started on this broadcast with some breaking news coming in. And 24 hours after Ghulam Nabi Azad severed ties with the Congress party, he has begun work for his new political outfit. He's meeting leaders of Jammu and Kashmir. These are the first pictures of that meeting as Ghulam Nabi Azad begins the legwork for his new foray into politics. A new political outfit is what he had confirmed to Times Now's Navika Kumar yesterday. That news break has been confirmed as he begins the groundwork for his new political outfit, meeting leaders of Jammu and Kashmir here in the national capital. These are the first pictures of that particular meeting. Yesterday, remember, Times Network's group editor Navika Kumar confirmed to us that Ghulam Nabi Azad had told her that he was not going to join any other party. He was going to float his own political outfit. 24 hours after he resigned from the Congress, severing ties of 50 long years, Ghulam Nabi Azad has already begun the legwork for that. Sharon, my colleague, joins us for more on this. Sharon, it is going to be a party that begins from his home state of Jammu and Kashmir, but eventually is going to take a national shape, is what Ghulam Nabi Azad had told Navika Kumar yesterday. And it looks like the Congress veteran, the former Congress veteran, has now begun legwork for that.
Well, that is right. And today, in fact, was the beginning of the same party launch, because we are seeing that a number of leaders who were, in fact, former Congress leaders from Jammu and Kashmir had, in fact, come to visit Ghulam Nabi Azad. They were here in large numbers, and in fact, this meeting was how they're going to launch a national party, and the legwork is going to, in fact, begin from the hometown of Ghulam Nabi Azad in Jammu and Kashmir. And in fact, today or by tomorrow, Ghulam Nabi Azad is, in fact, planning to fly out to Jammu and Kashmir, where he will be meeting other party members as well, because he's looking for an alliance with a like-minded party. So this is going to be a party with secular mind, with like-minded parties. So there's a possibility of alliances with other parties in Jammu and Kashmir as well. But this is going to be a national party, is what Salman Nizami, who was one of the members who just met Ghulam Nabi Azad, has also been